Hello fellow chatterers, and again we had chaos. So I was in the middle of talking to you all of my spoiler thoughts on The Girl Who Speaks Bear. If you have missed part one, this is an unintentional two-part video because my camera was suddenly full and gave me no warning. It just suddenly went maximum recording capacity reached and stopped recording. So I've gone through it and I've had deleted a load of stuff to give myself some space to carry on filming this flaming video. So there we go. Right, I will leave the link here so you can go and see part one if you have not already, but let's pick up where we started. So the bear is Yanka's grandmother, and she can move between being human or being bear, but it's not like she's not like being a werebear or like a bear shifter. It is about where she's feeling comfortable. So when she's with the forest and is kind of more connected to the forest, and that feels more of her home than the human village, she becomes bear. But as a baby, she started to kind of show more of an interest in human things and humans, and then she became human, and that was kind of where she wanted to be. That felt more of her home. So she's kind of in this little limbo. At the moment, she's horrified about being more bear and wants to return back to being human so she can continue to fit in, but also wants to know more about her past. So she's got a lot of things that she's needing to kind of work out within herself. So I really enjoyed how all of that played out. I enjoyed how she picked up her she picked up kind of relationships with the parental figures in her life. I really enjoyed all of those connections and things that she had, and how she started to appreciate her strength and her skills and everything that made her her, and how she realised that if she did decide to be one or the other, she'd be missing out on something. So she felt happy being herself. So I enjoyed that she enjoyed both her dual heritage and the gifts that it gave her, and that she wants to be both, but this time she's like owning it, and she's like, I'm proud of being taller and being stronger because this is who I am and I'm happy with this. So through having that, she would then feel able to kind of be in both the forest and the human world as well, and it was just lovely. So I enjoyed how it explored all of those resolutions and just the warmth and family vibe from it, and the friendship and things. It was really lovely. I loved all of that. So that is The Girl Who Speaks Bear by Sophie Anderson, and I'm now going to talk about the spoilers for Spinning Silver. So with Spinning Silver, the third protagonist, I didn't mention the third protagonist just because I like knowing as little as possible going into my books. So when I previously spoke about this, I just called them the third protagonist. But the third protagonist is Irina, who is of upper class. And I can't remember how far it is in the book that we start hearing from her. But she's the elder daughter of her father's first marriage, and she hasn't been married off to anyone because he doesn't have really a dowry for her, and she seems she's described as having like beautiful hair but being very plain, and we have this relationship with her, for all want of a better word, like nursemaid. I don't know if she has another word in here. So we see their relationship, and then Irina goes on her own journey and is linked to Miriam through Miriam's ability, through Miriam's inheritance of this stark silver, which she gets turned into jewelry, which is sold to the Duke, who is Irina's father. I believe he's a Duke. I can't remember. Noble person of the town where they live. The most aristocratic person of the town where they live in this particular world. And I love all of that because that's where we get the ring and the necklace, and then the crown symbolizing the marriage to a king. So I love how that all played into the Rumpelstiltskin narrative. I enjoy how we have the spinning straw into gold narrative, and we have Miriam's ability to turn anything into gold because of her pragmatic business sense. And so how she goes about doing that and how she goes about exchanging. So the Starks love gold. That is the thing that they love the most. We don't know why, but they have this absolute fascination with gold. So after hearing Miriam boasting, she's then given these going up in threes purses of silver to turn into gold. And through doing it, she's just using her pragmatic business sense, and I just think it's fantastic. But I also love the nod to the fairy tale where the miller's daughter was shown bigger and bigger rooms of straw to turn into gold. But obviously in the fairy tale, she doesn't actually do it. It is Rumpelstiltskin that comes and does it for her, whereas in this, Miriam is actually able to do it herself. So I enjoyed all of that. And I enjoy within the Rumpelstiltskin story, you have this kind of debt and collection narrative that Rumpelstiltskin says, what will you give me if I spin the straw into gold? And there is the ring and then the necklace, and then it's the firstborn child. And the final debt does not happen. She doesn't want to give up her child, understandably. But also the threat of the king killing her if she can't spin straw into gold. I never liked as a child. I never liked the fact that the king threatened to kill her if she couldn't spin straw into gold, and once she could spin straw into gold, he decided to marry her. I hated that as a child, and I much preferred Rumpelstiltskin to either of the characters because he was able to spin straw into gold. And I felt sorry that he didn't collect his debt, even though the concept of giving a child over was horrific. And then you also have the power of the name as well. So instead of giving the child over, he says, I bet you can't guess my name. I'll give you 3 days. And it's only done through him singing around a campfire. So if you set someone a challenge, don't dance and sing around the campfire and give someone your answer because you will be overheard. And she guesses his name, and it's Rumpelstiltskin, and he gets angry. And so we've got the power of names in there. We've got the firstborn child, and we've got the 3s. And I love how all of that was echoed in this. I love that you had the 3 purses, the 3 gifts, and then you have Miriam having to do that task of changing gold, of changing silver into gold within the Stark kingdom as well. And that's all done in 3s. And she also has 3 helpers. So I love this kind of 3 contingency. So it pleases me that it feels very fairy tale. There's always like 3, it's 3 or 7 in fairy tales. They seem to be some sort of magical number. So that was a lot of fun. Anyway, going back to Irena. So I like how you have Irena and Miriam complementing each other. So you have Miriam with who's having this sort of like power of wills, like mental strength battle with the Stark King. And then you have Irena having this, what starts off as a kind of a mental battle with the Tsar. And then you realise that there is a demon connection, and it's like this fire demon. So you have these 2 very different characters, and I enjoy how the Stark King and the Fire Demon are very, very different characters. The Stark King is very, very aloof. The Fire Demon is very chatty and very open about plans and very simplistic in what they want, whereas the Stark King is very close. So I enjoyed the difference within those. And I thought it was very, I hated the Tsar. It creeped me out. I was very intimidated by the Stark and his treatment, and I didn't like those. So I thought the crafting of the villains was very well done, and the atmosphere for them. And then when you realise the Tsar is inhabited by this demon, that was crazy as well. And then it turns out it's Chernobog, which is it's a Slavic like deity, I think, or Slavic demon. So it is of folklore anyway. So I enjoyed that connection as well. I just like the direction the story took. Like, you think you know what's happening, and then it's just taken a completely different track. I also enjoyed the connection that we have between the gold and the silver, and that when Miriam goes into the Stark world, it's not just her business sense. She's also got this physical power. Like, it's her ability to, you know, be able to change things into gold. From, I will buy this, and then I will sell for this, and then I will offer this, and I know people will like this. It then becomes a physical, I can touch this and turn it into gold. So I really enjoyed that, how that power was kind of changed throughout. I enjoyed the meaning behind why the Stark people enjoyed the gold, and all of that kind of like fed into the harsh winter and the fear of this. I thought all of that was beautifully done. I enjoyed how the silver and the heritage of Irena, of having like being like an eighth or something Stark, or a quarter something Stark, had this ability to kind of pass through reflection into the Stark world when she's wearing 2 of the silver things. I thought that was really impressive. So and the connection between them, I really enjoyed all of that. So all of the plotting and all of the weaving, I thought worked really, really well, and all the references to Rumpelstiltskin, I really, really enjoyed. And of course, we then get the revelation that the Tsar is the baby. So his mother, who was a sorceress, made a deal with Schönenberg that she wanted to have the power. She wanted to be Tsarina, and in return for that, she promised her firstborn child. So that means Schönenberg was able to inhabit the body, and the baby has never known anything else. It's now a man, and he has never known a separate life from this fire demon that's basically living inside him. So that's nice and horrific, but I enjoyed that we still had that firstborn child kind of bargaining tool as well. So yes, I enjoyed all of that. I enjoyed the Miriam's money lending. I enjoyed that. That was it. I went off on that tangent, and I think I never came back to it. That we see how her father just was like, well, they can't pay me at the moment, so I won't ask for the money. But then she's like, no, this is your business. This is what you've promised. This is what they've promised. They cannot then spend money on whatever they like, but not pay you back. And then meanwhile, you're poor. I enjoyed how she started taking control and being like, look, it's a service. I know it's money, but we're lending it to you, and you give it back. Like, that's the service. And I loved how it became like a more of a logical thing than a horrendous, scary, like demonizing thing. But that's how the village people see it. They still see moneylenders as scum, but still use their services. So I enjoyed all of that prejudice and that kind of hypocrisy in there, and the kind of internal battle that Miriam had with her parents, that were more compassionate and didn't, but also the difficulty of shame, that they couldn't provide the comfort for her, but still at the same time didn't quite approve that she's then got to go and ask people for money. I thought that was really interestingly explored, but there was still a love with her family in there. And I like how it wasn't touched upon as much, but like getting the fine line between being able to have some compassion, but also being firm within this is what we need to survive. So I think I would have liked it a little bit more, but I still enjoyed that whole aspect of it. And I always love seeing a failing business being turned on its head. I always enjoy that storyline as well. So that made me very happy. And I love the relationship she had with her grandfather as well. I thought that was brilliant. I think that was possibly her relationship with her grandfather, and Wanda's relationship with her brothers were my favourite relationships in Spinning Silver. I felt something for those, whereas my struggle with this is I didn't quite feel for all the relationships, and I didn't quite feel for all the characters and have that emotional connection, and that is what I've struggled, and I can't pinpoint, because I think the plotting and the retelling is brilliant, but the characters leave me a bit cold. And it's not that I don't like them, it's just that they've set me at a distance. And I can't quite pinpoint why all of that is. I really enjoyed the secondary characters within the Stark Kingdom. So the three people who are sort of like Miriam's servants to begin with while she's in there. And then they make this pact and this deal while she's being set this giant challenge. They work with her to make that happen. So there's a mixture of cunning and magic used, which I really appreciate. I like that type of storyline. I like how it was done. I liked the stakes. I would have liked to have seen those characters a bit more. I would have liked to have seen more of the friendship between them and kind of the growing development and understanding with that world, with more interactions between her and those characters individually, because they sort of felt like they were kind of all the same. Like they all had their different roles, but we didn't get to know them properly. But I appreciated the tool they were in the story. But I would have liked more character from them and to have spent time with them and to have understood more of this cold status-based court. But that wasn't the purpose of the story, and it would have made it too big. So I do appreciate that as well. So I'm going to keep contradicting myself, because I'm like, I'm going to want more of this, but actually I don't feel there was a place for that in the story. Which leads me on to the two romantic relationships in here, which weren't really romantic. I suppose end pairings is kind of what I would say, rather than any kind of romantic relationship. Between Miriam and the Stark King in particular, I think it is taken down more of a romance path, but it's not one that works for me. It feels much more marriage of convenience. I didn't feel at any point the change in from sort of like contracted obligation to care for the person. There was an appreciation and respect for what they were doing, but I didn't, it was too big a jump from that respect and appreciation to love. Like it just wasn't there. So it felt much more like, I approve of your career choice that you actually feel you enjoy having the power and the decision over these people. And I enjoyed seeing Miriam in the human world feeling irked that she'd lost all of that power once she's back in the human world after being in the Stark world, and that Irena outranks her being the Tsarina and she can't do anything. But I like how she's irked by that, and it felt right that she chose to go back into the Stark Kingdom for some of her time, because she's grown into that role and she likes that. So I enjoyed that. And I can see what Naomi Novak was trying to do, exploring the pride and exploring the kind of the culture of bargaining and debt. But it felt like a lot. It felt like Miriam has to prove herself so much more to be seen on a level, and then to be seen as better than that level, and to be seen as constantly strong. Like, what's going to happen when she has a moment of weakness, or she just wants a lazy day, when she's like, do you know what, I just want to not have to work and I just want to just go and read a book in a hammock? Like, when does she get to do that? Will the Stark King still respect her at that point? Will she get to have that opportunity? Or is it just the strength? Is she going to have to be strong all the time for his love to remain the same? Like, I don't feel that was explored. And I feel very much like you need to love the worst and best of someone. But again, I'm asking too much. The romance is such a secondary part of this. Like, it's not a big part of the story. But for me to love it, I need to kind of, that would be what I was missing. So I'd need to see more of the genuine affection between two people for me to be on board with it. But there wasn't enough room in the book, so that's why I'm contradicting myself again. And also with Irena and the Tsar, whose name I can't remember, there's a lot of understanding from her point of view, and there's a lot of her understanding what it must be like to have this realization that he's always had to live with this person. So maybe, he's been dealt a bad hand. So she gives a lot of sympathy and understanding. But we don't get the same amount back from him. It's like a grudging, but of course you would have done this, but of course you would have thought that. There isn't actually any kind of care that we're seeing beneath that. The final line is, in terms of them, so I enjoy again how Irena uses her bargaining and what she says and her. So you've also got the debt between Schöneberg and Irena never making that debt. Like, I'm never going to put myself under obligation to you because I do not want anything from you. And I love how she manages to go about, and she just absolutely steps into this role and owns this Tsarina ship, and I think that's fantastic, and I love that. Again, that growth and that power, I thought that was great. But in terms of her kind of relationship with the Tsar, we just get this. So she claims him that he's hers, and Schöneberg has agreed to give up everything and that is hers and leave all of what is hers alone, and that includes him. So he is then banished from him, and we are being told this through is it Marguerite? I can't remember the name, but it's her maidservant, and I'll come on to that again in a moment, but it's her maidservant telling this. Only after the last wisp of smoke was gone, then at last, with a jerk, I turned to look at my girl, my Tsarina. The Tsar was holding her hands against his chest, the ring on his finger gleaming pale silver like the tears running in silver lines down his cheeks. He was gazing down at her with eyes shining jewel green, as though she were the most beautiful thing in the world. And I understand with that paragraph, we are then supposed to see his appreciation of her. And we've seen him trying to find what everyone else sees in her, but he can't see it. But it's like, again, it's a massive leap from her trying to see what everyone else sees in her and why they all worship and love her. And he's angry because he's full of this fire devil. To then she saves him from not just his life, from a fate worse than death, from this thing. So in order for him to appreciate her, she has to do something massive. And I'm like, the scales are just so tipped. Like, the women have just proved themselves so much that how are the men going to beat that? So if we're looking at the debt to counteract, I mean, the Stark King says it, like he hasn't got anything to repay her with it, so he's aware of that. But I just feel like his expectations are he's constantly going to want this strong person the entire time, and it's like, but will you love her in her moments of weakness? Will you do that? And I don't quite buy that he will. Whereas with this one, it's like, until you literally save me from this fiery demon, I don't get why people think you're awesome. It just feels very imbalanced to me. So I can't quite get on board with it. But I can see for the flow of the story it works, but I can't get on board with it. So the change in the narrative voices. So I've mentioned that we've had the three protagonists, Miriam, Wanda, and Irena. Wanda's story is then taken up by her younger brother. So we start to see things through her younger brother's eyes and not hers. And I feel this is a bit of a shame. It's interesting, but by having Wanda seen through her younger brother and Irena's story seen through her maidservant, her nursemaid, we get a first-person narrative, but we don't get that emotional perspective. Like, the agency is all through Wanda and through Irena. There's not a huge amount of agency. They're supporting, they're wanting them to succeed, but they're from the sidelines. They're not in the action. And I feel it would be much more powerful if we were in the action than being on the sidelines. I either want third person, where I'm told everything, or I want first person, where I'm in it. I don't want to be seeing action from the sidelines, and it just didn't have the same impact. Like, Wanda has a relationship with Miriam that Septon, I think he's called, the youngest brother, doesn't have. Like, he cares for his brother and sister, he cares for Miriam only because he's grown to care for her parents, not her herself. So we don't get that emotional connection that we would have done had we had the story told from Wanda's point of view instead of his. I'm not saying that I wouldn't want anything told from his point of view, because the narrative of the seed and how that worked and the bigger picture that took was really well done. And the same with Marguerite. Like I wouldn't mind a bit of things from her perspective, so we can see what her life was like and her relationship with Irena. But at the end, we didn't get Irena's emotion from it, and I think that added to me feeling set at a distance and being held back from getting emotionally involved in the story. And I think that's everything I wanted to say. Oh, I was just going to read a passage. So this is the Stark Kingdom. Where is it? I've marked it out. Have marked it out. I'll pause and find. So I wanted to read a bit from the Stark Kingdom so you get to see a little bit more of Naomi Novik's writing style. I looked over that glittering sea, those impossible frozen faces staring back at me, expressionless with disapproval. They couldn't put me into this picture either, and they didn't want to. There were some smiles in the nearest circles, cruel and familiar. They were the same smiles I'd grown up with all my life. Only this time, they weren't even smiling at me. I was too small for that. They were smiling at him. A little incredulous nobles, pleased to see their own king brought low. And I've lost it. Oh, I've lost where I was. There we go. Sorry. I followed him. What else was I to do? As we neared the shining glass wall of that vaulted space, I saw the other Stark, stepping into open ways, doorways and tunnel mouths, as if they lived within the crystal walls like houses around a meadow. The ice stream widened steadily as we walked alongside it. Near the end of the vaulted grove, where we came to a shining wall, the frozen surface of it grew thinner, so I could see the water moving deep beneath it, and where it reached the wall, it cracked upon the surface to show moving water beneath, before it plunged into a dark tunnel mouth and vanished. So she's really great with creating the atmosphere and giving you the feeling and the detailed description of places. But I struggled to fall in love with her characters. So that's the difficulty that I have. So we are at the end of the video where I'm going to talk about, will I be reading from these authors again? I think it's pretty clear that I continue to adore Sophie Anderson. I absolutely love The Girl Who Speaks Bear. I love her writing. I love the emotions I get. I love the characterization. I love the themes that are dealt with in these books. I cannot wait to read more Sophie Anderson. I have her 2 other books to read, The Castle of Tangled Magic and the one that came out last year in 2022. The name I can't remember, but I'm really looking forward to reading them. I think she's an absolutely fantastic writer. So yay, continuing to love the one I love. Have I changed my mind on Naomi Novik? Yes and no. The story worked for me in this one. The plot, the way it was all pulled together. I knew she was a good writer in terms of her craft from reading Uprooted, but her plot was insane and I couldn't cope with her characters. I liked her characters in this one. The plot was fantastic. The retelling was fantastic. I loved all of that. I thought that was really well done and so clever, and the intricacies and the weaving was phenomenal. I loved the representation we got in here. I loved the different explorations. I loved all the themes. I loved how all of that worked. But you know what's coming. I liked the characters, but I didn't love them. I couldn't get emotionally involved with them. Like, I appreciated their difficulties and their struggles, but like, we weren't friends. I wasn't friends with them. I didn't feel the emotional connections and the relationships in here deeply. Like, I should have felt more emotion about Miriam and her parents, but I didn't. I just saw that it was there, but I didn't. There was emotion between, there wasn't a storyline to get that emotion between Miriam and her grandfather. There was more between Wanda and her brothers, but it kind of went away again because Wanda stopped telling the story and we had Septon telling it instead. And I just didn't quite get there with the emotional connections. I felt very much set at a distance. They're very cold. And I just can't break through. So it doesn't quite work for me in that. And that is the bit I love about books the most. I want to be emotionally invested in the characters. I love relationships between characters and seeing them change and grow. And I love bonding with them. Because I didn't get that in here, as much as I appreciate the story, I'm never going to reread this. I'm glad I read it and I enjoyed it. But I reread books to go back and hang out with those characters and have this emotional reaction to the story. And I didn't get that in this one. If Naomi Novik writes another book that gets the same ravings as Spinning Silver, I might read it, depending. But I'm not necessarily going to be looking for it. I don't have any inclination. I wasn't so blown away by this that I then want to go and read like the Golden Enclaves series or her other books that she's written, because her characters don't break through to me. I can't connect completely with her characters. So I'm really pleased I read this because I really enjoyed the Rumpelstiltskin and all of the themes involved in this and the plot. But I'm not going to be going and picking up any of her other books, unfortunately. So that has cemented that. Naomi Novik and I are not the reader-writer combo. I still think she's a brilliant writer, and I'm so pleased she works for so many people and so many people absolutely love this. That's great, but it's not for me. So there we go. In conclusion, I'm still loving the ones I love, but I couldn't quite get on, but I have a better understanding of why I couldn't get on with Naomi Novik now. So I'm pleased to have that explored. Oh, please get chatty in the comments. I would love to hear from you. If you have read Spinning Silver and The Girl Who Speaks Bear, if you've read Uprooted, if you've read The House with Chicken Legs, please tell me all your thoughts, especially if they're different to mine, because I love that. I love seeing how people can just react to books differently. So please tell me all your thoughts. Or if you just have an interesting point to make about anything I've said, or a boring point, you know, if you have anything to say, please chat with me in the comments. I'd really enjoy that. If you're hoping to read any of these and so you have just only listened to kind of the beginning where it was non-spoiler in the end, that would be great. And leave me a snowflake if you've watched the whole video, so I know who did that. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry for the chaos, but I feel great for being able to have a really detailed, good chat about these books with you all. Happy reading, everybody.